We're going to go live to Sydney now for a media conference with the Transport Workers Union National Secretary Tony Sheldon. He's commenting on new research showing fuel tanker drivers are being pressured to speed and skip rest stops, and that up to 45% of tankers have poorly maintained brakes.
People are accepting those contracts.
Look, I think there's quite clearly a three-level responsibility. There's a driver, there's a transport company, but the person who has the economic power and making the decisions to award contracts to companies such as has happened in the oil, gas and fuel industry, where contracts have been awarded not to the company with the most best performance, not with the company with the most reliable systems in place, not with the companies that have the newest trucks, but the company that gives the cheapest price. So when you go for price over quality, and when you talk about mobile bombs on our roads, then you say that that company that's awarded the contract has done it absolutely negligently.
What do you mean by mobile bombs?
Well, quite clearly we saw only last year in Mona Vale and in 2009 at Bateman's Bay, where people were torched alive as a result of pressure on truck drivers. We saw the coroner make a report in 2009 calling on a whole series of changes both within this state and across the country to find that those changes have only been implemented by very few companies. And the reason why, because it costs money and you don't win contracts if you have your trucks the safest they can be.
What changes need to be made, Tony, that haven't been?
Well, what needs to be done is that Erica Betts and Warren Truss, the Industrial Relations Minister and the Road Transport Minister federally, needs to deal with this as a federal issue and support the Remuneration Tribunal and an application we've made today calling on all the clients to be accountable, all the transport operators to be accountable, and to drivers to have their fair share of accountability in a system that can only make our roads safer. What Erica Betts has said, that sort of approach, having a one-stop shop to fix this problem, is red tape. Well, since when has road safety been red tape? The only red tape is when coal say it's going to cost some money. Well, this application for a national dispute means that we'll be having more meetings of drivers around the country in the oil, gas and fuel industry. It means we're applying to the Industrial Relations Commission and the Remuneration Tribunal to deal with the core safety pressures that are applying from clients on trucking companies and on truck drivers that is causing these horrific statistics where 15 times the national average of people are being killed in this industry than any other. That we know when incidents occur in the oil, gas and fuel industry, people get burnt alive, drivers lose their lives, road users lose their lives, and governments have to act, and this tribunal can force them to act.
Is the only action you're having to dispose of?
Well, I'd say this, and that is that regardless of the laws of this land that says you can't take industrial action to turn around and protect your livelihood, protect your lives, and protect other road users, I'll be saying to stop work meetings around the country throughout this tribunal period that we should be holding meetings, we should be stopping work, and we should be saying quite clearly to the government, you need to get on side with road users rather than watching people being incinerated and listening to Coles and taking away the one piece of legislation that can protect other road users.
How dangerous is delayed oil tanker brake maintenance?
If you do not have brake maintenance in any part of, whether you be a road, whether you be a normal vehicle driver, whether you be another truck driver, or whether you be a fuel driver, then you are then in a ticking time bomb waiting for it to go off. And quite clearly when maintenance is cut short, when people aren't allowed or permitted to put maintenance into their vehicles because clients are squeezing them on price, then that is negligence, that is horrific, and that is somebody actually causing deaths on our roads.
Are we likely to see any other action like go slows or the like on our roads?
Look, quite clearly throughout this year that the many transport workers are determined, including people that are doing the right thing in the oil, gas and fuel industry and the ones that are frustrated with the threatening of their jobs, that they are saying to us they're prepared to stand up, they're prepared to take action, and they're prepared to do go slows throughout this year and make Coles accountable that's actually sweating the trucks. Make the clients accountable and say to the politicians, we deserve better, road users deserve to be able to live on our roads without the fear of being crushed by our clients sweating a truck, and to make sure that our roads are safer, and we're prepared to stand up for that.
This was a, with respect, relatively small sample of about 90 users. Do you think that's indicative of what's happening across the country?
Well, we held a survey of over 2,000 drivers over 12 months ago, and that came out with very similar figures for Coles' retail supply chain. So we're confident that these statistics are right, but we're also absolutely worried to think that over half of those drivers are having to skip breaks, whether it's just to meet the deadlines and the requirements of the job to be completed to make sure they keep those contracts and to keep themselves employed.
So you've got some other people with you?
They won't be speaking with me. There's a number of other drivers as well that have been participating in the survey, but they're not speaking today.
Is it going to be a challenge in the sense if drivers feel they're forced to fudge the books to meet their deadlines, the government may turn around and say, well, look, we've got rules and regulations in place. They're required to service the trucks. They're required to take adequate breaks. What more can we do?
Look, I'd say this to any government minister, including Erica Betts, who obviously hasn't read any one of the coroner's reports or any one of the inquiries in the last 2 decades, and that is read the reports. When clients are sweating and economically threatening transport companies and drivers with losing their jobs, losing their businesses, then people take the only course they have, and that is they turn around and start sweating the truck and sweating the driver and doing extraordinary undercutting of maintenance just to meet those contract requirements of the big corporations that are making large profits at our entire travelling public's expense.
So you've got a small sample, Tony, but how widespread across the industry is this?
Well, this sample across is a large number across the oil, gas and fuel industry. But just over 12 months ago, we did a survey of close to 2,000 drivers, and it's reflective in both surveys. It is an epidemic in the industry, led by retailers squeezing literally the margins and life out of the trucking industry and other road users by sweating those trucks, sweating the labour and making sure maintenance doesn't occur as a result of that economic pressure.
So sweating, what do you mean by sweating? What do you mean by sweating?
In the case of what happens with sweating the trucks and sweating the labour economically, it means that maintenance isn't maintained, it means rest breaks are broken, it means deadlines are met regardless of the breaches of driving hours, regardless of the breaches of safe driving practices, just to make sure they keep their jobs and keep the contract. Inquiry after inquiry, coroner's report after coroner's report keeps saying it, and I say this to Erica Betts, read one of the reports, you'll be as disgusted as we are.
What's the prospect, though, of having any impact in this debate by lodging something with a body that already the federal government may well scrap? You've already raised certain concerns there.
Well, I can say this, and that is that unlike the federal government, we haven't given up on drivers being killed on the road. We're going to make sure that our loved ones, our friends and our colleagues can live to say and provide for their families and themselves another day. We're not going to give up fighting until the right thing is done by no matter who the government is, no matter who the politician is, and no matter who the powerful employer is. Coles have been lobbying Erica Betts and the government to get rid of this legislation. Well, we're determined to make sure that road users can safely get home after each night's work.
That was live from Sydney. We'll leave that there. The Transport Workers Union National Secretary Tony Sheldon with concerns about pressures on truck drivers.